Well, hello there, second graders. I'd like to say hi to Farah and Saman, Mayar and Lena. Listen, your teacher has assigned you pages 702 to 710, and that's in a new chapter, chapter 11. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to help you along because this is some really important stuff that you're going to be doing in this chapter. You're going to be dealing with geometry and fractions. And I don't know why, but everybody gets all jammed up when they start thinking about geometry and then fractions. But it's really not all that big a mystery. When you think about it, you look around your house, look around stuff in your room, and everything has a shape to it. It's either square or rectangular, or it's a triangle, or it's a box. These things are what geometry is all about. And then when you think about fractions, just think about that bag of M&M candy that you have that you're going to share with your brother or sister. And so you got a whole bag of M&Ms and you pour it out and you start separating it into, say, two piles or maybe three piles, and you try to make them all even and equal so that everybody gets a fair share. They all get a part of that whole bag of candy. That's what fractions are all about. So let's work on this a little bit and we'll get you through it. And I think you'll do just fine. I want to start though on page 693. There's a story and it's by Tammy Morton and it's entitled A Farmer's Job. So let's go ahead, 693 in your math workbook. And you see a picture of the farm there with the dog and the tractor and the farmhouse and some trees and the sun and a weather vane and some sky and clouds and some grass and flowers. And it's all inside the shape of a barn. So there's all kinds of shapes in that first picture. There's a triangle that makes up the roof. There's a circle that makes up the tires. There's rectangles that make up the windows. See, there's shapes everywhere. Let's go to 694 and begin our story. A farmer's job is never done. Farmers are busy during all the seasons of the year. They grow fruits and vegetables for people to eat. What shapes do you see? Again, on page 694, we see the triangle of the roof. We see the square of the wall, the rectangle of the doors. Lots of shapes. Why is the farmer's work important? Well, because they grow our food. If we didn't have farmers, well, then I guess we just couldn't eat. Page 695. In the spring, farmers get the fields ready. They plow the field and fertilize the soil. They plant their seeds. Now, what shapes do you see in this picture? Well, those boxes are nice and square. The shape of the truck is kind of rectangular. How is a farmer's work today different from long ago? Well, you'd have to know what farmers did long ago. And the first thing that I think of is they didn't have machines. They did everything by hand. Today we have machines that do a great bit of the amount of work that farmers have to do every day. Next page. In the summer, farmers take care of their crops. They make sure that the plants have enough water when it does not rain. Now, what shapes do you see here? Well, these shapes are a little bit more sophisticated because what you're seeing here are cylinders and cones. And cylinders and cones are also pretty common shapes that we see every day, but we don't really notice. But they are, in fact, part of the shapes that make up geometry. You also see different shapes throughout that picture. The ladder, for example, each one of the rungs of the ladder is forming a rectangle. Next page. In the fall, farmers harvest many fruits and vegetables. They sell most of these fruits and vegetables to other people. Now, what shapes do we see here? Well, again, we're seeing cylinders, like the big bales of hay that are at the top of the picture, and we see circles and rectangles, and gee whiz, look at all of those. I'm not even sure what they are. They look like heads of lettuce, all shaped round. Why does the farmer grow more fruits and vegetables than his or her family can eat? Well, they got to grow more, because if they don't, then they can't sell it at the grocery store so that we can eat, because we're not all farmers. Last page. In the winter, farmers clear the fields. They get ready for the next season. They plan what they're going to plant. They check their machines. A farmer's job is never done. And what shapes do we see here? Well, there's that cone again, and the cylinder. We've got some rectangular bales of hay down on the bottom of the picture. On 699, when you get a second, it's asking to write about that story. Now, you can read it again yourself, and actually it's pretty good practice for you to read it as well. Now, look at the pictures of the farm objects, and then draw a picture and write your own story about those objects. Tell about the shapes that the objects look like. And you can look at your vocabulary review over there. And we saw cylinders and cones, spheres, which are circles, squares, and they say rectangular prism. A rectangular prism is a three-dimensional rectangle. And we'll talk more about that. When something is just flat and only has a length and a height, that's two-dimensional. But when it has a length, height, and width, like a box, then it's three-dimensional. We saw circles and cubes, and a cube is a square that's three-dimensional. You know, kind of like an ice cube. Triangles and two-dimensional rectangles. These are just terms that you need to get familiar with, because that's what geometry is going to be all about. On page 700, they ask you to draw a line to match the shape with the name. So we've looked at the circle of the tires, the cylinder of the silos, and a rectangular prism of the bales of hay. And then finally it asks you to circle each shape that has a curved surface. Curved means it's round, not square, but round. So when you think about those shapes, put a circle around each one that you think has a curved surface. So now, let's dig into this. Page 702, the beginning of your assignment for today. Now, it asks to show what you know, because we all know stuff, and sometimes we don't even know we know it. But let's see just how good you are at what you know. Now, it's asking you to define, through those images there, equal parts. And what does an equal part mean? An equal part means it has two parts that are exactly the same. Now, if I had a square and I cut it into two parts like that, they're not equal. One part is much smaller than the other part. Equal parts mean split right in half, so that this is one half of the box and this is one half of the box. That's what it means. So now, look at those objects. Put a circle around the shapes that have equal parts. Now the next thing it's asking you to do is define three-dimensional shapes. Remember, I had mentioned two-dimensional. Two-dimensional would be just a flat shape. That's two-dimensional. Three-dimensional, on the other hand, takes that shape and gives it an additional dimension. What is that additional dimension? Well, here we have length and height. Here we have length, height, but we also have width. And that's what makes that three-dimensional. And you can see they are really different looking. So when you look at those images there, the one that's going to stump you is going to be the ball, because it looks pretty flat there, doesn't it? But that ball is three-dimensional. It's round, and it has volume inside of it. It's not just a flat circle. That's the difference between a sphere and a circle. So I'll give you that one. The soccer ball is three-dimensional, so that's your free answer. Number 4, circle each, and it shows you a picture of what is a cube. That means all sides of that box that you see there have the same measurement. And that makes it a cube. Every side is exactly the same measurement. Now when you look at the 4 objects they give you a cone, they give you a block, they give you a cylinder, and they give you a sphere. Only one of those is actually a cube. Let's see if you can pick out which one that is. Then number 5 and 6, they're asking you to identify all the shapes and match it to the name. So the first thing they're asking you for is a triangle. Triangle. T-R-I-A-N-G-L-E. Now, here's what you got to remember. Tri. That means 3. A tricycle has 3 wheels. A triangle has 3 sides. So any shape that has 1, 2, 3 sides is a triangle. So those sides don't have to be equal. They can be different lengths. We'll learn more about the differences between triangles, but the key to remember, a triangle has 3 sides. So any shape that has 3 sides will be the correct answer. Then it asks you to circle everything that is a rectangle. Now, a rectangle is any shape that has 4 sides. Any shape that has 4 sides. Now, maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, this shape has 4 sides. Is that a rectangle? No, it's not. And you want to know the difference? The difference is a rectangle has 4 sides. 2 of the sides are the same length in parallel. The other 2 sides can be a different length, but they're also parallel. Parallel means that they run side by side in the same direction, never touch one another. On the other hand, this is a square, and a square means that the dimension of all 4 sides is going to be the same. A rectangle, they don't have to be the same. A square, they do. That's the difference. So you just need to remember that. When an object has 4 sides that are equal, it's a square. When it has 4 sides that are not equal, then that's a rectangle. We've really jumped into this geometry. So far, you've had a whole lot of new stuff thrown at you here. Your job is to study it. Get it in your head. Learn the vocabulary. And remember what those words mean. Now, speaking of vocabulary, on page 703 is a vocabulary builder. Now, you've got a graphic organizer there. And at the top of the graphic organizer, it says equal parts. And then it has examples and not examples. And it gives you some words. It's asking you to draw a picture of an object that has equal parts and of an object that doesn't have equal parts. So equal parts means it's split exactly in half. Not equal parts means one part of it is bigger or smaller than the other. So you can draw that picture. And then it asks you to draw a rectangle, a triangle, and a square. And we just figured that out. Let's see if you can remember what separates a rectangle from a square from a triangle. Now there's a little game on 704, and if somebody at home wants to play that game with you, that'll be good practice. So let's look at our vocabulary. On the opposite page of 704, the first vocabulary word is angle. And angle, A-N-G-L-E, angle is any 2 lines that come together and between where these lines go is an angle. It can be any kind of angle. One kind of angle you're going to learn about is an angle that has a little box in the corner, and that's a right angle. You're also going to learn the difference between a small angle like this that is acute, and then if you take an angle and you make it bigger, like this, that's obtuse. Now, I'm not sure that they break down all these angles as we go through this unit, but that's 3 pieces of information that differentiates one angle from another. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure, later. The next vocabulary word is cone. Now, who has never had an ice cream cone? A cone is a shape like that. The only thing missing from it is a scoop of chocolate ice cream, right? All cones look like that. A point at the bottom and cylindrical at the top. The next vocabulary word is cube. And a cube, C-U-B-E, is a shape that's 3-dimensional. That means it has length, height, and width. And all of the sides are exactly equal. So a cube starts with a square, and then it adds the width to form a shape where all sides have the same measurement. A cylinder. Next word. C-Y-L-I-N-D-E-R. Cylinder. A cylinder, well, you all have used a straw, right? A straw is a cylinder. It's a long, skinny cylinder, but it's a cylinder. So a cylinder is a shape like that. It can also look like that. It has the ability to have stuff put into it or to, even in the case of a straw, pass through it. But the shape is that of a cylinder, and it is 3-dimensional. 3-dimensional objects all have the ability to have something inside it. Edge. The next vocabulary word is edge. And edge, E-D-G-E, on any shape it has an edge. The edge is the surface of that line. The next word is face. Now, let's do it right next to it. The face of an object refers to a 3-dimensional object, and its face is what is inside the edge. So this is the face. This is the edge. Got it? They're different. You guys have got a lot of vocabulary, and so you're really going to need to study this stuff. I got to make some room on the board here. So we can continue to put up examples for you. Now, here's a big new word. Or maybe I'm on the wrong page. Hang on a second. Nope, not yet. We got 2 things on the bottom of the first page of vocabulary words. A fourth of and force. So let's figure out what's the difference between a fourth of and fourths. The object that's on the board has 4 sections. Each one of those is 1/4. One-fourth, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. So altogether, it equals 4/4. And 4/4 is equivalent to 1. So this one whole object has been cut into fourths. That means it's been cut into 4 parts. And 1/4 of it would be one of those 4 pieces. So that's the difference. The object is broken into 4 parts. Those are the fourths. And 1/4 of that would be one of those fourths. Don't let this stuff jam your little minds up. Because it's just, if that was a bag of M&Ms and you were splitting it with 4 people, you'd make 4 neat little piles of M&Ms, and each one of those would be 1/4 of that one whole bag of M&Ms. You see? Pretty simple. Now we'll go to the next page. Some of these vocabulary words are going to get bigger. But we're going to do the same thing with halves and half of. Take our same shape, we're going to split it in 1/2. Again, this whole shape is equal to 1. It's 1 square. And each one of these is 1/2 of that. And 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 2/2. And whenever you see the same number in the numerator as is in the denominator, and that's what these are called, the top number is the numerator, bottom number is the denominator. When they are the same, I don't care what number it is, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as long as it's 6/6, they will always equal 1. 1 is your one whole bag of M&Ms that you're going to split with 2 of your friends equally. So, this is a shape that has been cut into halves, and this is half of it. So now we've done fourths and we've done halves. They can be broken into even smaller parts too. Just remember, it's all one whole broken into smaller parts. Now, here comes the big words. Hexagon. Now, this is where you've got to learn the terms. The term hex means 6. So a hexagon is a shape that has 6 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has 6 sides. So any shape that has 6 sides is a hexagon. Pentagon. Now you've heard that on the news, I imagine, at some point, when they talk about the military and their headquarters in the Pentagon. A pentagon is, looking at the prefix of that word, the beginning of that word, pent, means 5. So a pentagon is a shape that has 5 sides to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next word, quadrilateral. A quadrilateral. 2 words there, quad and lateral. The definition of those 2 words, quad means 4. Maybe you know somebody that's got a quad that they take out and drive around in the field. A 4-wheel vehicle that people can have recreation on. A quad. It means 4. Lateral means that the sides are opposite of each other. So a quadrilateral is a shape that has 4 sides, and they are lateral to one another. The next word is quarter of. Now you remember, let me just put that down, quarter of. You all know that a quarter, I don't think I have a quarter in my pocket. I'm going to look. Nope, no quarter. Y'all know what a quarter is, 25 cents, a quarter. And we all know that there are 4 of those in $1. $1 being the whole, a quarter being 1/4 of that whole dollar. So a quarter of means the same thing as 1/4 of. When something is broken into quarters, and see the qua, see the relationship between those 2 beginnings of the word? That means 4. So a quarter of is 1/4 of something. Like a quarter is 1/4 of a dollar. Rectangular prism. Now, the word that's important here is we all know what a rectangle is, right? It's a 4-sided object. All rectangles, by the way, are quadrilaterals. They got 4 sides. A rectangular prism, the new vocabulary word here is they've added prism. And a rectangular prism, the difference between a rectangle and a rectangular prism, a rectangle is 2-dimensional. A rectangular prism is 3-dimensional. So your rectangle, there's your 2-dimensional rectangle, and then we're going to make that into a prism by adding a 3rd dimension to it. And now it has length, it has height, and it has width. That's the difference between a rectangle and a rectangular prism. And then finally, the last word on your list, and it's a long list too, you've got your work cut out for you, is side. A side is just what it says. That's a side, that's a side. Each part of these shapes is a side of that object. The side of your house, the side of your car, side of your head. Your head, by the way, is kind of like a sphere. You can put stuff into it. Hopefully, we're putting some stuff into it here today. But you sure have your work cut out for you, because you've got all that vocabulary, and we're still not done. I turned a page, and there's 4 more words. Well, we know sphere. Everything that's round and three-dimensional, in other words, a soccer ball, the earth, the sun, a baseball, a golf ball, anything that's round and has air in it or space inside of it, remember that makes it three-dimensional. That is a sphere. Vertex and vertices. Now there's one we're going to spend a little time on. Vertex and vertices. You're probably wondering, what the heck is that? Well, whenever you got 2 lines, if those 2 lines come together at some point, that's the vertex. So, where these 2 lines come together, that's a vertex. Where these 2 lines come together, every place it comes together, those are vertices, vertex. And it can be an angle. If you have an angle that looks like that, they touch right here. That is its vertex. If it has more than one, like the pentagon has 5, altogether it has 5 vertices. So vertices is just the plural of vertex. This only has 1 vertex, but this has many vertices. Everywhere the lines touch, is a vertex, is vertices, more than 1. Vertex, multiple vertices. Now that we know that, the last thing, boy, I'll tell you, they're really pushing you second graders. This is a lot of stuff. You're really going to have to spend some time. The next word is thirds and third of. So let's look at that. Thirds and third of. So we take our shape again, and this time we're going to break it into 3 parts. So that means it's broken into thirds. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Altogether, 1, 2, 3. Remember what I told you? When it's the same number on top of the same number, that equals the 1. And this is 1 bag of M&Ms that you're going to share with 3 people. You break the bag of M&Ms into thirds, 3 piles that are equal. And then you can give 1/3 of it to each person. So that's a third of, and this is the bag broken into thirds. Now, your teacher wants you to go to page 710. Well, you got another game you can play there. And man, she wants you to do three-dimensional shapes too. I'll tell you what, I think that's enough just to do the vocabulary, because I think your little brains are going to go, and then you're going to have fractions of your brain. That means smaller parts flying all over the living room. Work on the vocabulary. Look at those words. Try to remember what they mean. Play the games that will help reinforce what those vocabulary words are. And we'll come back tomorrow and talk about three-dimensional shapes. Remember, the difference, and it's not that difficult. Three-dimensional shapes means it has 3 dimensions. This shape here is 3D because it has length, width, and height. And that's all that 3D is. Sometimes you go to the movie, right? And you can either watch it regular or you can put on the glasses they give you and watch it in 3D where everything seems to be coming in and out at you. You know, kind of like I'm looking at you. All of a sudden, you're in the middle of it because it has depth or width. So that's what 3D is. Take a look at lesson 11.1, and we will go over that tomorrow. On page 711, where 11.2 starts, there's a word there, attributes. You know, that's kind of crazy for a second grader to know what the word attribute means. An attribute is just an aspect of something, a part of it, what makes it up. So when we get to that, at least you'll have that already tucked away. I don't want to get too far ahead because really you've got enough to do with just the vocabulary words. I mean, look at all this. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk about three-dimensional. Look around your house. See how many three-dimensional things are in our everyday world. You take care of yourself, stay out of trouble, stay safe, enjoy Ramadan, and I'll see you tomorrow.